There you go. Thank you.
High-spirited, everybody. Isn't it pretty? Wow.
Sorry about that. No, it was going to be a disaster because when you have the wrong fonts, everything gets different sized and nothing was going to fit in its window. So I apologize for that. So today we just wanted to carve out some more time than we can do within the context of an annual meeting to talk about the financial realities of the church, particularly through the annual budget, which we realize doesn't necessarily strike you as such, but is really a profound document of our faith. It is one of those tangible expressions about the priorities and concerns of our heart as a community, and is a core element in making the mission of Christ Church and the vision of Christ Church possible today and for tomorrow. And so we just like I was saying in my sermon, all of these things, these tangible decisions that we make, are all reflections of the faith we possess and the faith we share. And so it's important for us to realize that the annual budget, while it is financial in nature, is fundamentally a document of our faith, expressing our values, our vision, and God's mission in this place together. Come on. Oh, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. So, I have to stand over here. No, I want to turn this on. If I don't turn it on, it won't work. There we go. So, first of all, the budget is a vision for today rooted in the mission we share. We chose that language because while our vision for a particular period of time may shift from not from year to year, but maybe from epoch to epoch in our life, from generation to generation, the core mission of our community does not change. Does anybody recall the mission of Christ Church?
Something about bringing Christ to everybody.
Close, we're on it. Bringing Christ, that's good. Somebody else said, people together, to bring God and people together to know and live the good news of Jesus Christ. That's what we're here to do. That language was articulated, not new to the church, but it was clearly articulated about 30 years ago in one of the leadership and strategic conversations predating the education wing, in fact. So the vision we're talking about today as part of Excel in Love is rooted in the mission we have long shared as a community of faith. The conversation of To Excel in Love began about 6 years ago. After we made some significant changes in our common life, quietly the leadership of the church and vestry began to explore, well, what does this mean for us going forward? And so what we quickly realized is that while the conversation was beginning, it was not actually new. For some will remember the Committee of Nine. Right? I know Betsy's head's going to go up and down. She was a part of that. The Committee of Nine, their work dating back to around 2000. There was also the Moving Forward Committee, that work around 2010, 2011. All fed into the conversation that the vestry and I were having around 2019 into 2020, feeding into our vision for today, to excel in love. I say all of that just to help remind us that these conversations are really ongoing conversations. They're ongoing discernment that include the leadership of today with the leadership of generations past. They weave together. And what's so beautiful is they often overlap one another. They often reflect one another, as we certainly found today, that the priorities of To Excel in Love were in fact not new priorities for Christ Church. In many ways, the commitment of To Excel in Love was simply to, let's do this finally. Let's live into this. Let's do these things that we've been talking about for years. So what were those things that we've been talking about for today? We've been talking about maintaining our worship life, right? There is a sense of beauty and holiness that we experience when we come together. We've always wanted to maintain that. How to build upon that, how to enrich it, how to sustain that in our common life. Now that is from the words that we say together, the traditions that we share together, and the songs that we sing together. How do we kind of nurture that life of worship that we've inherited and that we cherish? In fact, that was the first thing that came out in the conversations with the vestry and surveys that we conducted. But we also identified an ongoing commitment to our children, youth, and families, that was a high priority in our common life. Nurturing, growing, deepening our care and ministry to our young children, to their families, and to our youth. Another priority was rooting, deepening our care for our Christ Church community, right? Deepening our connections with one another, enriching our lives with not only old friends but new friends, but also caring for one another more effectively as a living community. Not just individuals who share a pew, but friends who share a common life together. We also identified the need to serve our neighbor more effectively, wanting to reach out beyond the grounds of 61 Grosse Pointe Boulevard to our neighbors both within Grosse Pointe and within Greater Detroit, particularly as our outreach leadership for years has said, to our neighbors in the Jefferson-Chalmers community. And so we were looking at ways to deepen and expand our service to our neighbor. We also realized that we need to be excellent stewards of the gifts that we have, right? That means caring for the facilities, the grounds that we've inherited. Generations before us have given us this remarkable gift of Christ Church. How do we care for, how do we steward those gifts? How do we steward also the financial gifts that others give to us? Again, the generations that have gone before, but the gifts that you give as well as members of the community. How do we make sure that we are being really faithful and earnest stewards of the gifts that we have received? And finally, how do we sustain this ministry into the future, right? How do we ensure that the things that we believe we're called to do and to be are available not just for us today, but for the generations, our kids and our grandkids to come. So those are the guiding principles of To Excel in Love, and I think you'll see that if you were to pull out the case statement, you'd see those 6 principles coming out in our common life. Maintaining our worship, our ministry to children, youth, and families, deepening our community bonds, caring more for our neighbor, sustaining the gifts that we have, and stewarding the gifts that we've received. So stepping out in faith. I'm going to turn this over to Richard, unless you'd like me to keep going, Richard. How would you like to? I
thought Colleen was going to do this.
Yeah, oh, Colleen! So everything is right there in front of you as well.
Thank you. And you've got the
Yep.
the machine here. Okay. All right. As you'll all be aware, after the consideration which Drew has described, the question became, okay, we now have this aspiration of what we want to be. What have we actually got to do to get there? This developed into the Excel in Love campaign, where we raised some funds, but we also, through the vestry, made a commitment to effectively invest over a 5-year period about $2.8 million, which was a significant commitment. The purpose was to actually allow us to increase the resources which the parish had available to deliver on the aspirations which Drew has just described. Many of you have actually contributed to this. There's some who haven't. Last week I did say to people, to the parish, if you haven't, please contribute. If you have, please contribute more. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So this is a sincere, major commitment that's been made, and it has enabled us to add significant resources. And this presentation arrived at 12:05 this morning, so I'm not really, okay, here we go. That's the one. Really creating the vision and delivering on the vision that had been put together. So, what have we actually done? The commitment was made by the parish to use this 2.8 million over a 5-year period. So what have we actually achieved?
Let me tell this part.
Okay, go for it.
So we've been active, as Richard mentioned. The vestry made a bold commitment in 2021 to invest in the ministry of Christ Church so that we could live into that vision today. Confident that with your support, we'd be able to sustain it for tomorrow. And so we've been behind the scenes. We've been enacting, not really behind the scenes. We have been implementing this vision now for 2.5 years. We've been in the thick of it. But it's meant wonderful things that I think you will enjoy remembering. Since 2021, these are all things that are new to our life in the last 2.5 years, 3 years. Living with grief, a new program of care for anyone who is living with grief today. It's a lay-led program developed by Mother Maureen, sustained by volunteers, supported by our communications office and Colleen Fitzgerald, in order that we can care effectively for the grieving in our community, but we also beyond our community. Twice now, we have invited members of the broader community to come and be part of leadership development here at Christ Church so that they might take this same program and offer it at their church, whatever their faith and tradition might be. Just one ministry that is new these past couple of years. Also, the Labyrinth. I'm standing on one of those commitments, right? To make this kind of space possible both in beauty, but also in spiritual depth. What else have we got? Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. If you've been up to the second floor, I encourage you, if you haven't, to go and take a look at all of the richness that Lisa Brown has brought to our life as part of her ministry as the Associate for Children, Youth, and Family, specifically enriching our life with the educational model of catechesis of the Good Shepherd. What else have we got? We've restored the crossings. One of the elements of To Excel in Love was to better tell our story. And so having the crossings restored in our life helps us share the ministry and vision that we so enjoy with one another. We also have the Christ Church Commons, a new ministry utilizing principally the kitchen at the moment with a community's eye. So we have several makers who come into the kitchen. They rent space from us. It's a business. It's an opportunity for them to hone their business and to develop their business professionally in an encouraging and sustaining environment. So it not only produces some new revenue for us, but it also helps us support local entrepreneurs who are trying to expand their business. That's the Christ Church Commons. We also have, Euchre Night. David loves this. He's not the only one that loves this, but just a night of friendship and fun. All right, about 3 or 4 times a year now, we're coming together just to play a game or two of euchre as friends do and have done for generations. So Euchre Night is something new. The book group has been restored, coming together 3 times a year to study a book and explore it with some depth in a way that we can't, some things that we wouldn't otherwise study on Thursday nights. Thursday nights have also found their enrichment in our common life. Common thread, a knitting group. They say they knit, but I'm not sure they do. They come together and they fellowship and they laugh. And some people knit, some people crochet, some people needlepoint. But most importantly, they come together twice a year in fellowship and twice a month, excuse me. I'm scolded already. Twice a month for fellowship and friendship. Our teen retreat next week, our kids will be going on their second teen retreat to a retreat house in Oxford, again under the leadership of Lisa Brown, supported by the Office of Children, Youth, and Families, so Marissa Bennett being part and parcel to that. We also have our facilities improvements. These are really subtle. I often use, it's not so glorious, but I often use the restroom here in the Undercroft. If you haven't, go take a look. It's just beautifully restored. But there's another example. This one you probably will never, you would never know. And it's a quick story. About 3 months ago, I was standing in the narthex just before you come into the church. I looked up to the ceiling, which is beautifully finished carpentry, right? And I looked up and I noticed that one of the panels had dropped about 3 inches. It was just kind of precariously. So that was a Sunday afternoon. Monday morning, I pulled Randy Anderson aside. I said, Randy, we need to go look at something. Went up there. He looked at it. He said, I got to think about this. I went up there at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was just about nearly restored. He had identified the problem, which was a structural problem behind the fascia that you would see. Had worked to restore it. You can go up there, take a look, and see if you can find out where the work was done. I would challenge anybody to be able to identify it to me. He beautifully repaired that work quickly, timely, in a way that nobody would even know there was a problem. He's doing that kind of work behind the scenes every day, just making sure we steward our facilities beautifully and well. So facilities improvements. Increased volunteer engagement. I often say the first sign of leadership success is volunteer engagement, right? The first people that come to support the children's and youth family are the volunteers who look around and say, I can be a part of that. First people that come and be a part of living with grief are not the grieving, they're the volunteers who say, I can be a part of that, right? And that's scaffolded on the leadership that To Excel in Love makes possible. Finally, I mentioned our hearing assistants, just another expression of things that we're able to do now that we have the commitment and resources, both of leadership and financial, made possible through To Excel in Love. So these are things that we have been doing over the last 3 years, all as part of this investment for Christ Church. Almost none of which, I would argue, none of which would be possible without it. Right? This is what living into the vision looks like. And I real kudos both to the vestry who made the commitment, kudos to those who have supported the commitment, and kudos to the staff and volunteers who are implementing it today. But our progress hasn't just been on the programmatic side. It's also been on our financial side. Do you want me to, can I just keep going at this? All right. Correct me. We've been huge growth financially as well. Our annual new pledge, our average new pledge last year was $8,000. That's a substantial commitment from new members at Christ Church on average, right? We've been working hard. Part of Maureen's ministry is helping to enrich our new member engagement so that new members feel more engaged have a firmer and healthier understanding of what it means to be a member of Christ Church from the beginning. It's a wonderful expression of our new members' commitment and engagement within our community. We also, over the last 3 years, have seen a $90,000 increase in annual giving since 2001. So our members are giving more to sustain this ministry that we're enjoying and we're celebrating. We also have new revenue. I mentioned Christ Church Commons. We've raised our budget for this year is about $16,000 of revenue through Christ Church Commons, and that's always with possibility of growth. While the Christ Church Commons isn't meant to be a cash cow, it's not there for that purpose, we are consciously looking at ministries that can increase our revenue in some ways to sustain our ministry. Of course, we had the capital campaign to excel in love. That was a booming success as well. It's not done, but I mean, already we raised cash commitments of just over $3.5 million and have received cash gifts of $2.8 million to date. I mean, those are substantial gifts towards our endowment and supporting this ministry. On top of those, we also restored our legacy society, and so we've had legacy commitments, also part of To Excel in Love. We received $2.8 million in legacy gift commitments as well. All told, To Excel in Love has generated $6.5 million in pledge commitments, 3.7 in cash, another 2.8 in legacy gifts. Huge commitments from you, our community, supporting this vision and making it real in our life. The vestry took the bold position of saying, we're going to make it real from day one, and you as a community have said, we want to be a part of that. So huge props to you as a community of Christ Church for the progress that has been made in sustaining the ministry we share, both today and for tomorrow. I'm going to just pause. There's a lot we're sharing. Any questions to this point? Yes, Don.
Will these slides be available on the website?
Probably not the website, but anybody that would like them is certainly available. They're available to anybody who would like them.
Okay. How does one?
Just shoot me an email or shoot Diane an email. Be glad to share them. Yeah. That begs a big question. I mean, it's just a little side. Why doesn't everything go on the website? Because not everything is actually meant for general public conversation, right? So there are things that are meant for members. There are things that are meant for the wide community. The website is a public. It's like your front door. What you post on your front door is not what you post at your kitchen table. And so we think about the website as that public-facing space. But that doesn't mean that there is not a conversation that is appropriate, as we're having even right now, internally within our community. So if there's something you're ever looking for that's not on the website, don't hesitate to ask. Just gotta let us know. Yeah. You know, it's a wonder. It's not technically part of the Commons because the Parents' Day Out program is a core element of our life and ministry that we are intentionally offering. So the co-op, as it was structured in the last 20 years, would have been a better example of a Christ Church Commons kind of ministry, a ministry that is external to our life, utilizing common space among us. The Parents' Day Out program is a program that we run and operate at Christ Church. Their staff members are staff members of Christ Church. Their budget is an ancillary budget of Christ Church, overseen in this case by Lisa Brown, with her PDO staff of Leah Menino, who is the director of the PDO, and then teachers as well. So a little nuance in that one. Yeah. Well, let's look a little closer. How does the budget come to be, and what are the responsibilities that we share? This one I definitely want you to speak to.
Okay, if I can get this to
There we go.
advance. It did. Okay. Responsibilities here, I think, are very much divided. Obviously, the way the budget is developed is through the rector and the administration. The role, however, of the finance committee, I view as being quite important here. Essentially, the way I've tried to approach it is that the responsibility of the committee is to see that the budget and effectively operating plans are consistent with the vision which was particularly described earlier on by myself and Drew. It's making sure that the plans we have are consistent with where we're trying to get to. It was a very deliberate decision to actually spend and invest funds. And if you look at just a singular year, like 2025, with no the budget, if you look at that without any reference to the journey we're on, you're going to be thinking, why are we doing this? Because it's a negative spend of about $560,000. It makes sense if it's part of the continuum of the Excel and Love program and where we're trying to get the resources of the parish to. When we do our analysis within the Finance Committee, it is more intense, reviewing the spending, but particularly looking at the ideas which essentially the parish has signed up to for the future. I view that as our responsibility in Finance Committee to see that's consistent and to see that, frankly, the numbers add up. We then, if we agree with the proposals, and this last year we had 2 or 3 iterations of the budget discussion. Once Finance Committee was happy with it, it was then passed over to Vestry for approval, and Vestry did approve it. After that, it then becomes a responsibility of the administration to carry out the plans which are embedded in the budget. Now, on an ongoing basis, we expect to be looking every, say, quarter at, are we actually spending within the guidelines which were already set in the budget? And because of the growth we're going through and the aspirations, particularly to develop the school program, I see there is some risk ahead, which we need to recognize. The first one is, will we actually get all the people we need for the school program? Will we be able to recruit them? We've done well so far. Lisa Brown's a great example of bringing really good resources in. There is also the timing issue. Will we actually get to the milestones we want to be at in time to effectively see the income from the school steadily increase? Because by the end of the Excel in Love program, the expectation is that this will actually break even and that the resources which have been put in place will effectively generate enough income to cover the needs of the parish. It's fairly ambitious. There's some risk in it, but we're about halfway through, and I think so far we've done pretty well. So beyond this, tried to talk a little bit about the Finance Committee, but there are 2 other oversight functions. One is the Investment Committee, which does oversee the endowments. And the endowment's quite complicated because there are many restricted funds and so on. So I'm not going to try and walk you through it today because it is complicated. I think we made a significant decision about, 2 years ago, when we decided to put the endowment management in the hands of Northern Trust. And so far, it appears that their performance, because they actually have authority to invest on our behalf, so long as it is within guidelines that the investment committee laid out. I did go back and look at previous performance, and I really think that there were some opportunities lost in the past for growth, which we didn't take advantage of. And frankly, I'm quite confident that Northern Trust, from what we've seen so far, are likely to do a pretty good job for us. So I highly recommend that decision that was taken. And then, of course, there is the requirement that we have for an external audit, which is done annually and is taken actually pretty seriously. Since I've been involved, there have only been discussions about, well, classification of costs, have you got them in the right bucket? But I've never seen any comments from the auditors about whether you're representing properly the performance of the budget and the controls. So I'm very confident with the backstop of the audit, which we do annually, and yeah, it's a pain doing it, but it's a discipline which I think is very necessary. And
Is the audit done every year, or is it every other year?
The audit, I was going to
Yeah.
make a small correction. Audit is done every other year. In the intervening years, the auditor conducts a review. That work is not quite as strenuous as the full audit, but it is fundamentally the same. It just saves us some resources. But having the same auditors come in to do the review ensures that they're asking and following up on any questions, and they know kind of where the tricky parts are within our financials. Yeah. Yes.
Could we come back to the Montessori school? What kind of market research or market analysis was done
Sure.
to determine that service provided like this would be?
Yeah.
up to you.
Yeah, I'll step back in. It's a great segue. So a variety of studies have been done as part of To Excel in Love. Lisa Valley-Smith did some background research both within the community of Christ Church and beyond about the need for an education center and our openness for an education center. We are fortunate that when the education wing was built, it was built with the capacity, and I think really the mind, that we would have education offered there on a daily basis. It was built, obviously, with the mind of the co-op nursery and Mother's Day Out programs that were part and parcel to our life. So it's really a continuation of that vision, but just expanding into a larger space than was before. I think the biggest, so let me step back into this conversation. One of the vision pieces of To Excel in Love, as part of our commitment to our children, youth, and families, but also to our community neighbor, was to look at early education opportunities. Given that we have the physical resource of space already embedded in our life. And I think the fundamental question that was being asked was, can we and should we offer a program similar to what we already have? We have a Parents' Day Out program Tuesday through Friday from 9 to noon. There's the legacy program of the Christ Church Co-op, which at one point was a program of Christ Church, eventually broke out to become an independent a program of the community housed at Christ Church. But that was also a Tuesday through Friday half-day program, 9 to noon. We asked the question and heard the need for a program that would be more responsive to a wider segment of the Grosse Pointe community. A 4-day-a-week program, principally Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 to noon, is really limited in its availability to parents. It's a subset of parents who primarily have a stay-at-home parent available on the other, not only half days, but off days as well. And so the vision is to expand to offer a 5-day-a-week program and true half days, which in preschool language is 9 to about 2. What we've found, we've been testing it with our PDO for program as it is. Many families are really delighted with a 2 o'clock pickup because that's nap time. So what families are finding they're able to do is, for those that are able to work from home, it's still a hurdle that we have. A 9 to 2 means a kind of 9 to 3, 3:30 window for their kids. And so we've been kind of looking at what our opportunities are. 9 to 4 true full-day programs have a whole host of licensing requirements that are kind of challenging to meet. But we can get pretty close with something that goes to 2:30 in the afternoon. So that's what we're looking at, kind of exploring how do we offer a program that can meet a greater section of Grosse Pointe and kind of east side families. Yeah. Currently, the current program is 16 months to young 3s, but we're looking at going up to young 4s. Yep.
And this co-op program, how many students did they have?
I don't know exactly, but our space is authorized for about 12 students per classroom. So you have our current program, we can house approximately 48 kids on the first floor, maybe a few more because of the half room that we have. There is consideration, but that's very far down the road about looking at upstairs. But again, licensing requirements around stairs and access become more complicated.
So there's no, the building doesn't need to be changed?
Not significantly, no. No. Yeah.
Just because I'm confused, how is this going to differ from what was the Christ Church?
A couple of things will be different. First and foremost, it will simply be a Christ Church program. Right, the co-op was an independent program. The co-op was a co-op in nature. But part of the struggle of the co-op expressed to us back in what was it, 2021? No, it's 2021 when we renewed their lease and they chose not to. Was co-op. Volunteer support, family support was problematic. So a fully staffed program as opposed to a co-op, a program that would be owned and operated by Christ Church as opposed to a rental space provided by Christ Church. So those kind of differences. Yeah, yeah. It just becomes a kind of comprehensive early education program. Not substantially. I mean, there's competition in the space of early education, whether it's the academy or Liggett or mornings at Memorial or the co-op at the Methodist. I mean, on and on. So the competition isn't one of methodology and of education. It's just the competition of early education, of which we find that there is ample need in our community. The day we open registration is the day we fill our classes and fill our wait list, even as the program is today. And part of the market research is just identifying that there is a wait list at every early education center in the Grosse Pointes, and not to be answered or relieved quickly. Yeah.
Part of our study about this early on was after COVID. So many of the nursery schools around here closed, and parents were without anything. And that's when we began really saying, what can we offer, what will we offer, when we approve this, and how do we want to change? So there's a need in the community. There's also a need in my mind, and we talked about this down the road, of reaching out to be able to offer scholarships so we can reach into the Jefferson Commerce area and help some of the parents there as well in their kids being able to But we really started this conversation when COVID hit, and all of a sudden the bells went off in the community. And a lot of those nursery schools have not reopened. So there is a need.
We can have a much broader conversation about early education at Christ Church. That we can't do all of that today. So I want to keep us on track within the budget. But Richard had something he wanted to offer.
Add that there is another element to the oversight. And I wanted to say that particularly the senior staff and particularly Diane has demonstrated such commitment and diligence in looking after the affairs of the parish. And I know you're going to move on, Diane, I think. But I omitted to say anything at the parish meeting last week, which I regret, but I wanted to give, on behalf of all of us, a great thank you for what you've done for us.
Hear, hear. Well, and Richard's right. I mean, it is a very collaborative leadership and oversight that's ongoing, from the budget creation to its implementation. If the senior staff, the associates, know more about what's going on financially than most, because they're just invested in it and they're implementing it. And so people will sometimes come to me or come to Diane and say, I want to know about something. We'll say, great, wonderful. Let's talk to Maureen, or let's talk to Lisa, or let's talk to Scott, because they're embedded in it. And so they're part of the oversight. The finance committee is a critical part of the oversight. The audit task force and our external auditors and our investment committee, they're all working together to provide oversight and accountability for the budget that we implement together. So I know I'm going to kind of press us through, but I want to talk about some of the particulars of the budget and what it means for our common life. We have about $3.1 million in annual revenue that is broken out into 4 primary tranches. The first is our generational giving. That didn't show up the numbers. That got too small. Generational giving. There we go. That's better. About $820,000 comes in through generational giving. That's legacy giving from our endowment. So you'll hear of old names from our life: Curl Tutag, the Vaux, right? To name just 2. Your parents, right? The Sweeney Lecture. Like, all of these pieces are generational gifts that are impacting and sustaining us today. The Tannehill Foundation. Many of you might know of the Tannehill Foundation for its generosity to the DIA. What you may not know is that the Episcopal Diocese of Michigan and Christ Church Grosse Pointe are also recipients of that generosity as well. All of that is generational giving, often commonly referred to as our endowment. All of those legacy gifts that we spoke about are commitments to generational gifts given by the living for generations to come. We are immensely indebted to the generosity of those who have come before us every year. We have restricted revenues, about $685,000. Those are revenues that come in for a very specific purpose. The Parents' Day Out program would be at the heart of that. The choir trip would be at the heart of that. These are monies that are received, concert tickets, etc. These are monies that are received for very specific purposes. At times they're restricted gifts for flowers and such, but the lion's share of it are for program specific costs and expenses. We have member giving, actually the largest part of our annual budget is just over $1 million that we receive from you as members to Christ Church. But there is a problem, as we all know, and that is that there is a shortfall in our giving. Our giving does not sustain all of the life that we are called to have, that we have spoken about, that we have dreamt about, that we have prayed about, and now are committed to living together. That shortfall, as Richard mentioned a little while ago, is just over $500,000, $580,000. You're going to see that come forward a little bit later as well. And that's the nut we're trying to crack in leadership. How to overcome that gap in our life in order that the life we love together is sustainable for generations to come. That's the hard work that we are about behind the scenes at Christ Church. But those are the four primary ways that our life is supported. Again, if I go back to the beginning, generational giving, restricted gifts and program revenue, member giving, and then a member shortfall. On the other side of it, we have approximately $3.2 million in annual expenses. Expenses that, again, are kind of tranched in some major ways. The first area of expenses is the general administration and support. That's the life that just happens week in and week out, effectively, whether we're a parish or not, right? We have a giant facility that requires over $500,000 of upkeep and administration on the year. $590 goes into buildings and grounds. We have administration for the whole program of Christ Church. Of course, if we didn't have the program, administration costs would be lower. But that's all of the kind of behind-the-scenes support, marketing, administration that sustains the ministry that we enjoy. We make a small investment in stewardship and development, and we have our communications and marketing. These are all kind of the administrative and support sides of our life together. On the other side, we have our programmatic expenses, right? We have everything from our music program, which comes in at about expense a net of about $500,000 on music. We have our worship life, we have our parish life, we have our outreach ministries and grants, we have our Christian formation ministries. These are the things that give us vibrancy and life. This is the stuff that makes us a living church. And that comes in at about $1.6 million a year. Notice our annual member giving is about $1 million, and our programmatic life is about 1.67. If we do our math together, we're going to see this is where our gap lies. The primary gifts of our generational giving sustain our our administrative support. They ensure that the building is sustained well, that we can continue to be a pleasant chapel in Grosse Pointe. But the ministry we love, the thing that gives us life and harmony today, these are the ministries of music, of worship, of outreach, of Christian care for one another, Christian formation for our kids and for us as adults. That's the life at the heart of our community. And that costs us about $1.6 million a year. On top of that, we have a final little. There are the direct program expenses. Somebody might say, "Wait, there were 685." Yes, there are some other expenses that are embedded within our ordinary programs, such as the teen retreat has a registration fee. The choir camp has a registration fee. We haven't broken all of those out. We've broken out the two largest, the choir camp, so the choir trip and the parents' day out. Those this year are going to account for about $350,000 of expense with corresponding revenue on the revenue side. Yeah.
Is the choir trip every other year?
It's 3 out of every 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's the occasional year where our total expenses drop by about $400,000, and everybody asks, what happened? Well, we didn't go to England this year. We didn't send 50 people, then book their trip and travel through Christchurch. But some people have often asked, like, Drew, that doesn't make sense. We're just $1.5 million. That was one of the things I heard when I first got here. We're just $1.5 million organization. And what we were often talking about is just the programmatic side. But if you look back at our audits for the last 20 years, you will see that our auditors were saying, no, you're about a $2.2 million organization. Because of all of the ancillary work that is being conducted through Christchurch. Obviously, over the last 12 years, programs have grown, as has with To Excel in Love, our commitments to fund those programs. But yeah, this is a big operation that we're fortunate to be a part of, with a ministry that we're fortunate to be a part of, but with real expenses that go with that. So again, the three primary tranches of expense on our budgetary side are the administration and support that steward our life together and open the doors of our life to the community. Our programmatic ministries and expenses, the things that give us life and joy and kind of relish in our life. And then, of course, some direct program expenses and costs. Don?
Can you put a number or a percentage of those expenses going to salaries and benefits?
What is that number? I don't know off the top of my head. I can pull that up.
I can pull it up as well. I would estimate that our salaries and benefits are about 65 to 70%. 65 to
No.
70% of our costs.
No.
You don't think so?
No. 65% would say that salaries and benefits are $2 million. So, yeah, please look a little further before we do that. Thank you. We're looking into that. Yes.
The 600,000 shortfall that you've been discussing, is that net of the Excel in Love?
No, that is well, net of what? Excuse me.
So we have people increase their giving
Yes.
through Excel in Love
Yes.
over a period of years.
Yes.
So in the 600,000 shortfall or the special draw, is that net of
Yes.
this above?
Yep. So we are the next 3 million of gifts to Excel in Love. We got a 3 million. Will generate $150,000 of operational expense. That's going to lower our expenses. We're continuing to drive member giving. That will will cut into this. We're also looking at programmatic revenues to cut into this.
But
So
in 25 or 600 range.
in 25, we're 580 short. Yeah. Yes, Cheryl.
You say that the average pledge is $8,000?
Average new member pledge.
New member pledge?
Yes.
So that would not include the Excel and Love?
No, that does not include Excel and Love commitments. That is just the average gift from new members in 2024 was approximately $8,000. Averages, of course, there are some higher, there are some lower, but a really remarkable starting point for new members. Yeah.
Benefits and salary are actually 50%, I was, in my mind, including some of our contracted
Gotcha.
outside staff.
Gotcha. So what are we to do about this? This one I'm going to also leave to our dear treasurer. There were two things. Three things.
Yeah.
Serve and give.
Well, I think we need to place this in the idea that we're a community. We're a community of people who come together at Christ Church. So there are really three expectations. This works as a community if we show up and we actually participate. And it's not just only participating in Sunday morning services. It means participating in a number of the other offerings which the parishes now and Drew has described. So we have a responsibility, if we're part of the community, to show up. We all make choices about what that is, and there are different emphases which individuals make about the things they want to participate in, but it is an appeal to everybody. Just remember, being part of this community, it is our responsibility to participate in it and contribute to it. Actually, other people here like to see us. It's not just us going to see them. It's a matter of they may actually like to see us.
They like
show
to
up.
see you, not me.
The second part is the humbly serve, we call it, but that is participating, for instance, in Crossroads and a number of the functions which Drew has described as basically the add-ons which we have added in the last 2 to 3 years. Then the third is the ask about sacrificially giving. Drew's just said that new members are on average giving at a pretty good rate. And that's a challenge to all of us to effectively meet the sort of benchmarks that they have, that the new members are putting out there. So this is always the difficult, and I know Drew wanted me to say this rather than he did.
I'll say it.
But no, there are expectations that to sustain this, we do need to get giving to be increased. And there is a long-term statement that we'd like to see everybody eventually tithing. And I know when I was first introduced to Christ Church a long time ago, the first time I ever met anybody was, at the conclusion was, well, you're expected to tithe. And having come from England, I didn't even know what that was. But I think you all know what it is. So there is a long-term aspiration that all of us will eventually tithe. The long-term life of this community, it depends on us finding ways to offset this $560,000 we've identified today. And I'll just repeat, if you just look at the accounts for the budget for this year and don't know any of the additional things we're trying to do, it doesn't make any sense. We might as well just go back to a norm and have maybe two priests, just keep the lights on and pay the insurance. But that's not what we're trying to do. That's not what the parish has signed up to try and do. So this is an ambitious program, And we are really asking everybody to look at their pledges and their increased Excel in Love donations, legacy. If we get the Excel in Love cash and legacy commitments up, there is a fund which will allow us, our people who follow us here, to also enjoy Christchurch. Just think back to the people who gave in the past and created the endowment we have. We're lucky to have it because it does keep the lights on and everything and gives us the opportunity to do other things. So it is an appeal to everybody. Please look at your own contribution in terms of your time, presence, but also in terms of sacrificially giving and supporting a lot of the outreach programs. So that is my pitch.
I'll open up for any closing questions. Thank you, Richard. Mary. Yes.
That I would expect to see. As a Christian, a Christian, how do I have that conversation faithfully and respectfully to basically fix it?
Yeah, it's a really profound question and a hard one. I think the first part, I don't know if everybody heard the question. It was Mary asking, how do we talk to our friends who are members of Christ Church, who are not supporting Christ Church financially, or who aren't here? Right? We all know of old friends who are longtime members of Christ Church, or new friends who are members of Christ Church, who we don't see very frequently, or who don't support us year in and year out. How do we talk about that? I think the first thing, and that's why this slide, I think, is so critically important. It's a conversation that we have with the vestry every year. It's a conversation we have with the nominating committee every year. It's a conversation we have with stewardship every year. And we actually need to get to the point where we don't have to have it every year. That is to say that the expectations, what it means to be a member, are so commonly shared and understood that they're just kind of part of the groundwork and groundwater of our life. Being present on Sunday should just be ordinary in our life. Right? It's very hard to be a community if we don't see one another. Right? We just become a chapel at that point. But a chapel is not a church nor a community. It's very hard to be a community of faith and service if we don't work together. We can't just leave it to 20 out of every 100 to do all the work. Right? It falls apart. Right? Imagine a boat. Right? If only 20% of the people did the work, the Navy wouldn't survive. Right? And the same is true of our giving. And so we just need to inculcate in our life this real understanding that to be a member of Christ Church means being present. Just ordinarily, regularly present. Pitching in, joining together, giving our hands to setting up for Euchre night, to, being part of the Easter breakfast with the kids, to being part of the children's program, just being part of it. And it means giving. And so with that kind of as a shared understanding, I think it lessens the challenge, because now I'm not scolding. I'm just saying, kind of reminding, right? We've missed you. I think that's the first thing. The last thing I'll say in your response to your question is, long before somebody stops giving, they often stop showing up, right? And so you want an easy way? Talk to the people you miss. Let's go to church together. Come. Let's go to get a cup of coffee after church. We miss you. Right? Let's focus. That's the irony of it. Focusing on the community side almost always leads to re-engagement on the financial side. So that's where I would start. Yeah, Don.
More than many years ago, when I last served on the vestry, you led a discussion of a book that identified 3 types of churches. Unfortunately, I can only remember one of them that was a program church.
Yeah.
May I ask you for the name of that book again?
Yeah.
And what the other 2 categories were?
The name of the book I may not recall. I have to kind of scratch my head. That's just kind of, but behind that conversation is just kind of organizational dynamics applied to churches.
Yes.
And there are, in today's vernacular, 5, and there were 5 kind of organizational structures to churches. There's the family-sized church. There's the program-sized church. There's family, pastoral-sized church, program, resource or corporate, and then today we would add mega to that, which is a whole nother kind of layer.
Certainly for further discussion, but where does Christ Church Grosse Pointe fit right now?
Well, Christ Church has, for the last 20 years, has, it's a great, I could have a whole forum on this conversation. It's a conversation I love, so you guys are being subjected to something right now. Christ Church today, I'm going to go back a moment. For about 20 years, Christ Church had its feet in 2 worlds. Corporate and program. Everything about Christ Church externally is corporate. Right? This campus is not, there is no program-sized church that has a campus like this. Right? The program-sized church, St. Michael's, kind of pastoral to program, could not sustain the organizational responsibilities of this campus. And the parish couldn't sustain it, right? So when we talk about parish sizes, we're talking about, organizational structures. We're talking about member size, member giving, staff size, and responsibilities, right? A program-sized church cannot sustain organizationally a campus like this. They don't have $10 million endowments that have to be navigated and managed professionally. They don't have music programs that are $500,000. I mean, these things, so we have, I say we lived in both worlds because we were structurally, externally, and financially and fiduciarily corporate. We were staffed as a program size. It was and will always be a major tension in our life, right? We want to staff our structure for a program. It's cheaper, but we want all the benefits of the corporate. So the local example I would give you, in Notre Dame Pharmacy versus CVS, right? You want a personal pharmacist who knows you and all the benefits that go with that? You go to Notre Dame. You want to be sure to get the exact gel tab you want? You go to CVS. Right? CVS is structured entirely differently so that they can ensure that they have all of the offerings all of the time. Notre Dame is structured differently so that it can offer a personal relationship, and, which occasionally means they don't have the gel tab that you want. Right? Those are different organizations, right, who offer much the same thing. That's when we start talking about programmatic size and organizational structure, that's what we're talking about. So I said historically, and probably for about a 20-year period. So I had a conversation with somebody who wanted to see our outreach life grow and change. And I asked that person years ago, it's been about 10 years ago, I said to the person, I said, when was it right at Christ Church? And they said, that's a good question. I think I got to go back to the late 80s when Peg and Greg Salmon ran our outreach. They went back to a corporate model. They went back to an era when outreach was run by professionals, supported by the volunteer members of Christ Church. So back in the 80s, back up until the late 90s, when Christ Church had 4 priests on staff, had 22 staff members, right? Corporate model, supported by a robust parish. We went through about a 15, 20-year period where we stripped all of that corporate leadership out, but none of the expectations and responsibilities. You still had to run the business as a multi-million-dollar business. You were just doing it, we were just doing it with one priest, when I got here, no finance administrator. So where are we today with To Excel in Love? Part of the commitment of To Excel in Love is to live honestly, forthrightly, and firmly as a corporate parish. To have the structure, the leadership, the Scott Hanoyan, Mother Maureen Martin, Diane Ward, Tim Wood, Lisa Brown, right? To have the organizational structure to lead and steward the ministry of Christ Church well and faithfully. And what you see from that was that slide of all of the new things that become possible when you're scaffolded with the right organizational structure for the ministry that you share. As I said, I can go on this conversation all day long because I think it's a really critical one that's overlooked in our life. But part of the To Excel in Love commitment was to say, we are a corporate church. Nobody likes that language, fine. It means two things. We're corporate, and that is we're a body. And we have, and another, the language I actually prefer is professional, right? We are led professionally, right? No program church has a music program like Christ Church, right? But that comes because we have Scott Hanoyan and Jackson Merrill. It's not an accident, right? We have professional singers that make it a joy for our kids to sing on, right? You take 2/3 of that away. I love you, Scott. Keep Scott. You don't get that program. Right? So we are a professionally organized church, a professional church, sustained by and sustaining of a glorious and beautiful community. I've gone really long. Is there? Yes. The people are playing. Please. So thank you. I think Mary's asked a great question for us to think about. Really delighted. If you ever have questions about our financial life, don't hesitate to ask. You can ask me. You can ask Diane. You can ask Richard. You can ask Tim Wood as we navigate the future together. But don't hesitate to ask. We're delighted to sit down and share. Thank you, friends, for a really lovely morning, almost into the afternoon.